All right, so hey everybody, welcome back. This is episode 2, and we're here to talk with Merl, who wrote Shader Doodle, which is an awesome. It's an awesome web component, and it has to do with it's a hard subject for me because shaders and WebGL are hard stuff to work with, and I'm so glad you kind of like made a web component and wrapped all that up. So hi Merl, we're over the eastern US right now orbiting. We put ourselves in place, so we're lined up right in sight so we can talk to you. So how's it going out in Nashville? Yeah, you can't see me, I'm pretty far away.
It's good. It's a little rainy today, which I kind of appreciate. Some gloom is fun. Yeah,
cool.
Plants are happy.
Nice. I see a piano in the background. Nashville is such a good town for music. Are you a musician at all?
Yeah. I have a history of music. Kind of before I got into anything like software wise, I was kind of a full-time musician and slowly stumbled into the software world, and here I am today. But
nice. What kind of music would you play, or what kind of music did you play? What kind of music are you playing now? Has it changed?
Yeah, kind of all across the board. When I was full time, it was kind of really anything. Obviously, a lot of the work in Nashville was like country, folk, Americana, but there is a lot more other scenes here besides country. I played with some like hip hop groups and some R&B groups and some like alt rock groups, like kind of like the whole spectrum. So that's kind of fun. And then in terms of what I enjoy writing, it tends to be like either more experimental or like atmospheric, or kind of like wax and wane between like very electronic or very organic music. But
I feel like I hear about a lot of musicians that are also coders. I work with, I feel like that's a common thing. Like, do you find that as well? And does your music kind of influence your coding work and vice versa?
I think I like to think that maybe I approach things differently. I think in my experience, like places that I've worked at, versus like a very academic mindset, I think that's probably why I gravitate more towards creative coding than like, I guess, hard and fast like engineering. And while I do enjoy kind of like digging in and like hyper focusing on like some performance issues here and there, I definitely prefer the creative aspect of programming. And then kind of there's actually the other friend, what we were talking about, how like shaders and kind of like the pipeline of writing like a fun fragment shader is very similar to like modular synthesis, and how you're kind of like slowly sculpting this like waveform or slowly sculpting like randomness or something like that. And it's like similar but auditory versus visual.
I never thought of it. I really like that metaphor. I love that.
That's kind of fun. So I can see there's some elements that influence, and then also I try to find ways to like mix. I enjoy playing with like the web audio API a lot. And I also have like made some little like web MIDI like utilities and stuff like that. And I actually have a project that's kind of not public yet that I've been kind of cooking up with respect to that. But
very cool.
Yeah.
So what is being involved in creative coding, like I'm old enough. I think I'm older than you. I'm pretty sure I'm older than you. Back in the day, it was all Flash. So I'm sure you're beyond Flash. I'm sure you probably didn't get your start in Flash. But as a creative coder, like what do you use? What is your favorite place to do creative coding?
Yeah. So I did miss the Flash window. I remember looking at Flash sites and thinking they're cool. And I did tinker some with the web, but not Flash back then.
Yeah.
And I really didn't start digging into creative coding until, like I said, like probably 7 years ago now. Kind of like moving from like music into software, and like most of the tooling I use these days, like obviously 3JS is like one of the ones people hear about the most, and it really is one of the most like phenomenal utilities out there on the internet for getting started with WebGL, and in kind of unlocking all that power. And even I've taken inspiration from 3JS with some of my implementation in Shader Doodle even. And yeah, I think I use 3JS a lot. Obviously, like other experiments, I like to just kind of like keep it like very like lightweight and do like pure CSS stuff and see how far I can stretch CSS, which went through a phase where I was really like code golfing CSS a lot just for the fun of it. So yeah, that's mostly just like pretty vanilla web tech stuff. And then 3JS. I really like there's another WebGL project called Regal that I've heard that. That one's fun.
It's interesting because when we talk about creative coding, you hear a lot about like Oh, now I'm drawing a blank. It's not OpenCV. It's the C++ one.
Yeah.
There's that in processing. It's open
Frameworks.
frameworks.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. So do you ever use that, or you just go straight to the web?
Mostly just because what I know is the web, and I think also the web. I think what got me to be a web person. I got exposed to programming here and there, like when I was younger, and everything that like the feedback loop was always very jarring and slow. And I was like, this is dumb. I hate this, and delete stupid. And then the web, it's like you save hard refresh, or now there's like hot reloading or like whatever. But
Yep.
it's just instant feedback loop constantly, and I think that's what got me like learning and excited. And so for the most part, I do tend towards the web now, because of the immediacy of it, and then also now the portability is for like something like Shader Doodle. You can have a web component and hand it off to like anyone. Someone can like make a glitch in a library. They don't even need to own a computer.
Yep.
And can kind of like, I don't know, learn and have fun. And so that's kind of why I tend towards the web. I do have like, I think I've been going through like an upheaval in ideals and like web technologies and like the resources they consume and stuff like that. So I have kind of started looking at other things that interest me that are like lower level or like maybe consume less resources. But for the most part, yeah, I do tend towards the web.
Cool.
Haven't messed much with open frameworks or like processing. I have done like P5.js, which is kind of like the processing on the web thing. But yeah, not a lot of kind of non-web tech that I've messed with.
Right on. And so this, I mean, being kind of like more on the experimental side of the web, I know you've dabbled in some 3D. Well, you just said you dabbled in some 3D, but I'm thinking about your actual work too. Like you've done some 3D stuff there as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so kind of where I started exploring 3D on the web was I several years ago worked at like a creative like marketing agency. And obviously at an agency, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that there's a lot of work and you're always working, but there's also like a variety of work and can kind of get exposed to a lot of things. And if depending on where you steer that, you can kind of start carving your own way and learning things. So I got to tinker quite a bit with 3JS there for like marketing sites, or we would even do kind of these like more like hardware installations and things like with these like transparent displays or
Oh, that's fun.
remember one really fun one. There's that kind of like, it's like an illusion hologram where you take like a reflective glass or like a piece of glass at an angle and like bounce light against it. It looks like inside there.
Yep.
And we would like make like 3JS holograms and be able to hot swap, models really quickly into that little hologram thing. And
that's awesome.
So things like that. And then from there, I moved to this company, Magic Leap. They're like an AR headset company. And again, I worked predominantly on web technologies there, but did get to kind of help with some of the implementation of like web XR on our main like website, and then also kind of helping to steer the company towards doing web XR, because there were some kind of things in the air about our implementation of how we're going to do 3D in the web. And so it's kind of nice to be able to try to steer us towards standards versus like other ideas that we're doing. But
I mean, I remember Magic Leap was expensive. Well, I mean, the dev kit, like I think that was the only thing that was offered, right? I think I tried it out at work once and it was really cool. And I'm trying to remember, like, did they focus on the web a lot there, or was it mostly on like installed apps?
Yeah, it was mostly installed apps.
Okay.
And they started to pivot more towards the web, and one of the earliest implementations of the web did happen to be kind of proprietary, and that kind of like bothered me quite a bit. And there was definitely like a lot of churn and like, are we going to do this proprietary thing? And it was those of us in the WebXR camp were like, you're going to become Internet Explorer if you do this. And so like there's kind of this battle there. And then towards the end of before I left, I think things started to move more the WebXR route, which is really, really cool and exciting, because I think that, again, the iteration loop of that, like versus like trying to dev for native on the device is kind of this long kind of slog, and we want to make things easier for engineers and like designers to make, good experiences. And so that, again, the iteration loop of WebXR versus some of the more native options was pretty awesome. But
it's so remarkable to me. I feel like WebXR, or I think it was like WebVR back then, and it became WebXR. Like back in 2016, it was like so exciting. Like, we're gonna get this finally. And I feel like now it's here. We just have the standards, right? And we just need more hardware to consume this and better experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about Shader Doodle. So wow, where do I begin? So WebGL, like I said at the top, it's hard to work with, especially like you mentioned working with 3JS. I like Babylon myself, but these are all high level like APIs that you can just like import a model and go. WebGL, just doing raw WebGL, you're writing these shaders and they're like strings, and you have to like be very careful about what you write. And there's no debugging as far as what I know. And so it's hard to work with. And can you describe what Shader Doodle does, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I kind of obviously to your point, working with raw WebGL can be not fun, because it's a very a very low level and very imperative. Like you're like saying what you're doing with these bits and telling this thing to compile this shader into something that's consumable, and then like turn that into a program and all this stuff that like you don't want to think about to like I don't know make a frog jump on the screen or something. And so for Shader Doodle, what I wanted was, there's a lot of already kind of fun tools out there like Shader Toy or other stuff that allow you to just kind of like write a fragment shader and have fun with it. And I always kind of had fun tinkering with those things. And it started earlier on where I kind of made this thing called Shader Pen. That was just a function you passed a fragment shader string into, and would just do like a full screen quad. And yeah, so the whole idea was like, I just want to paint a quad and like not have like a big WebGL scene and like all the hierarchy of something like 3JS, like just something really low level, but high enough level that I'm not like wiring up all this boilerplate, and I can just write a fragment shader. And so that was kind of the idea with Shader Doodle, is what if I could have that quad just be like an image tag, and have the same behavior as an image tag, even when it came to like styling it with CSS and stuff, just like the very ease of, I want to be able to approach this as a web developer, and I have an image tag and can place it all the same ways I place an image tag, and it has all the same behaviors, and maybe even like alt text or something, which is very much an image tag, but then I can give it a fragment shader, and that's what it is. It's the fragment shader. And so that's kind of, I'm kind of rambling, I think now, but that's
so good.
kind of the idea there. And then it's slowly kind of like all ideas kind of snowballed into a lot of other things. I was like, I want to make it easier to be able to pass in textures, again, just be able to pass an image tag essentially and have a texture, or even like audio, be able to like respond to like the fast Fourier transform, like analyzing the audio waveform to like have like audio visualization kind of stuff.
Yeah, looking through your examples, there was some like cool audio visualization stuff, some like cool stuff where you're following the mouse. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yes.
And you mentioned Shader Toy, and I want to kind of make the distinction there. So I vaguely know of Shader Toy, and I know you support Shader Toy type shaders in Shader Doodle. You have a flag there that lets you support that. So Shader Toy is just a place. It's like a cloud-based place where you can write your own shaders, and people are doing some amazing stuff. Do I have that right?
Yeah. No, it's super powerful. Honestly, in many ways, it's much more powerful than Shader Doodle. I think the big thing for me, the difference is Shader Doodle is like portable, and that you can like self-host like your own shaders, whereas I think you can embed iframes of your shader toy. So it's kind of similar. Like you can have those on your own website, but I like the idea of like self-ownership and like not relying on a platform. And so that's again the other reason for doing this is just letting people have more self-ownership. Shader Toy does have I think my default syntax is like I have a bunch of default uniforms. It's all like the U_ style syntax for the uniforms, and then Shader Toy has like just a slightly different way they refer to those, the uniforms. Obviously, it's not like a one-for-one. Like you can't copy and paste all Shader Toy shaders into Shader Doodle, but for the most part, you can kind of like move them over and maybe change a few things. And I've kind of have like you said, a flag that lets you kind of have similar uniform names as the shader toy ones.
So that was my question. That's what that use Shader Toy attribute enables, is just switching over to these other uniform styles, right? That's cool. And to your point, it was a lot of fun. When I was playing around with this, I copied a bunch of Shader Toy stuff over to Shader Doodle. Some of it didn't work. I didn't expect like the amazing stuff on Shader Toy. Like you're like, how would anybody ever do this? I didn't expect that to work. So I took some of the more simple stuff, and it did work. It worked great, and it was kind of even that stuff. It's like just amazing to look at, especially in Shader Doodle on your own machine.
Yeah. And then oddly, a lot of the more complex ones are kind of unlocked now at this point, because Shader Doodle does have buffers now. It's not like really well documented, but that's like a lot of the thing that makes the crazy shader toys happen is the way they have like they're using buffers, either as like compute buffers or something like that.
Right.
And so now recently, because my favorite thing about someone else using the thing that I made is that's what inspires me to add features. And so there's this guy that was doing I'm trying to, he's Bite Mechanic on Twitter, and he was doing some like fluid sim stuff, trying to use Shader Doodle, and I didn't have quite the right setup of my buffers to handle like outside a specific range for doing compute shaders. And so like I was able to dig into that and fix that, so he could do some like water, like fluid sim stuff.
Wow.
Which then unlocked a lot of other, again, similar, like you could pull over some more, even more wild examples from Shader Toy now, because now I can do compute shaders. So I recently, a couple months back, made like a game of life demo, all on the GPU kind of thing. But yeah, it's fun to have someone else use your stuff and show you like other use cases, so you can be like, okay, I can make this better.
So many questions are coming from this. So well, what do I want to ask? So actually, okay, let me ask this. What do you think your primary use case of Shader Doodle is?
I don't know.
Those are the best projects though. Like, just I'm having fun with it. I want to share this. This is basically your thought process, right?
Yeah, that was my thought process. There's like things I'd like to showcase that can be used for more. Like obviously people like to make like some like really simple shader as like their background. Like kind of Stripe. I think Stripe did something like that. I was like, you can rebuild the Stripe background using Shader Doodle really easily. I think just adding like fun creative splashes to your page without pulling in a huge WebGL library, like making your bundle really massive. Like I've tried to keep zero dependencies and keep Shader Doodle really small. And then another thing that I did about a year and a half ago, when I added buffers, I kind of rewrote Shader Doodle to kind of share a single WebGL context. So every single instance you add is all essentially part of the same WebGL program, and then just like they take turns drawing. And obviously, if it's off the screen, it doesn't draw. And so that way you can have like 100 doodles on the page. And it's because I think each browser or computer only supports so many WebGL contexts. So a lot of the other big shader libraries out there, after you have like 16 of them on the page, they'll start crashing because you can only have so many WebGL contexts. Whereas this, you can just throw like 1,000 on a page, and hopefully it stays somewhat performant. But it depends on, I guess, how complicated your doodles are. But yeah, all that to say, for like a creative like marketing site, you could have like a thing here, and it's kind of like all scattered down your page and not have to worry about like, I don't know, managing resources too much.
I want to come back to the buffer thing, but speaking of creative marketing sites, I saw you just posted on Twitter what the Kanye West documentary by Netflix is using Shader Doodle, right?
Yeah, I got tipped off to that because there's another person that's kind of contributed some to Shader Doodle. And they like sent me a message like, hey, we like our agency or whatever worked on this site and we use Shader Doodle. I thought you'd want to know. I was like, that's really cool. And then like the other day I was like stumbling around and saw that someone was asking about it on the Reddit thread or whatever, like our web dev. I was like, whoa, like it was just kind of like a neat moment for me to see like people like asking about something like that. I don't know.
I think I'm the only person on the face of the earth that's not a Kanye West fan, so I'm having a hard time remembering the website. It was like, what was the name of the website?
Jeen-Yuhs, but it's like JEEN-YUHS.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Oh, okay. So I did want to come back to those buffers. So one of the things I was looking at that I wasn't familiar with is the Shader Doodle node concept that you added. Is that the, I can imagine it kind of being related to buffers, but maybe not. Can you describe what that is?
Yeah, that's essentially like my implementation of the buffers, and very strong inspiration from, I think it's called GL React. It's like it's very similar to Shader Doodle. But instead of, obviously using React as its kind of plumbing. But yeah, so they have a really similar node concept, and I was like, that's cool. Maybe that's how I should build buffers out in Shader Doodle. Jury's still out for me if I like that API. I think it can get a little, especially I think it makes more sense within the context of React. Within the context of kind of like authoring some HTML, it feels a little cumbersome sometimes. A jury's still out for me. That's why it's still tagged alpha 2 years later. But yeah, so that's buffers in Shader Doodle is these nodes, and you can kind of like this node kind of passes its what got rendered in that node to the next like parent node as like a texture that you can then handle and subsequently kind of like node upon node upon node.
Wow. I can barely wrap my mind around how to create some of these more complicated shaders. I can't even imagine, like, how do you like put into your brain what you can come up with, because it's just such a low level thing you're working with. Like, what is your thought process when going from, I want to make, do you start with like, I have a vision that I want to make, or do you just start playing around and it kind of works up to that?
It kind of varies. I think it starts with playing around. I think that's how I started learning. And then I think spending some time with things like, there's like this website, Book of Shaders, I think it's called. Like a shader kind of learning, kind of teaches you some approaches to, what to do with a random function, and like ways you can, or what to do to kind of massage your uniforms from like just like a 0 to 1 to now you have like a 0 to 1 inside a bunch of different squares, and then have like the index of each of those squares, and kind of like ways to kind of like massage those numbers to mean something for you to work with, I guess.
Yeah.
And so like, and then once you start to learn some more of those things, I think you can have a little bit more agency rather than just kind of like, I'm gonna mess around. And so I think that was, instrumental for me doing less messing around and having a little bit more control over what I'm doing. And then to be fair, honestly, I personally don't really think I'm super adept at like writing, really interesting and fun shaders. If anything, everyone that's been using Shader Doodle has been making way more interesting things than I make.
Cool.
Like I just want to enable them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Like if there's this thing blocking you, or like it's like I said with that guy Bite Mechanic on Twitter, like he's like, I like doing these fluid sim things that were like way over my head, and he was like, I just can't, like, for some reason my buffer is not working, and I kind of looked like just like the way my buffer was set up was wrong for handling outside this certain range of information. And I was like, okay, I can fix that. Like these are like, I understand like the plumbing of Shader Doodle far more than I understand implementing shader, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Kind of have fun, much more creative and smarter people.
This kind of leads me into like one of my other questions. I feel like we both appreciate just like the fun side of technology and doing experimental stuff. And I've personally found that I set out with good intentions to make a library, and then I'm just bored with it. I like want to move on. And how do you find maintaining Shader Doodle? Like, all right, like how does that go for you?
Honestly, similarly, especially like I think when I'm in the thick of it, that's when like all of my ideas start to snowball, and maybe I can implement like 2 out of 10, before I like get exhausted or tired or like interested in something else. And again, I think fortunately the thing that keeps bringing me back to like make that list again and again is like once in a while getting a ping from someone that like is like looking to try to do something, or needs to be unblocked in some sort of way. And I think that kind of like reignites that, re-sparks that.
Yep.
And I think without that, it probably would have like, found the dust pile a lot sooner. Because there are other projects that are like less used, that like very unrelated, that like kind of take the back burner and I forget about them and then come back to similar, like the web MIDI thing I told you about has actually been a thing I've had in the back of my mind for like 6 years now. And its implementation has changed over the years. Like now it's going to be a web component thing now. Years ago it wasn't going to be, but now like I very much like I have this idea of where I'm gonna go with it, and kind of excited to see where that lands. But
yeah, part of this question is when I was tweeting you before this show, I was talking about a Shader Doodle feature that I wanted to make the application that we're going to make in the next segment. And it involves like, so lit, the technology I'm using to make this application, you just make minute changes to the attributes on the DOM node on your element. And when I just want to like shuffle out scripts and replace them, Shader Doodle doesn't handle that well. And maybe it's, and when I told you about this, I could feel the pain in your voice as a maintainer, like, oh, I wish I supported this. And you were like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I want to make sure like I feel like this is a problem with maintainers. Like you feel the weight of the world, like you want to please everybody. And I want to make clear that you shouldn't have to. This is your project, and like, but it sounds like that's on the roadmap. And
that's something I very much want to support so bad. And it's been backburnered again and again and again. And it kind of came out of like wanting. I was like, it'd be really cool if I could just have a Shader Doodle on a page and use like Vue or React or Svelte or whatever, and kind of like you're saying, be able to kind of like tweak and update things, essentially make like a shader toy that's just like can live in like, I don't know, like a glitch site or something. could be really cool. And I think I got it to the point where like all the other attributes are by and large update in a way that makes sense. The big one was the actual shader
Yep.
and changing tag. And so that's been on the list for a minute. And now that like I have incentive, maybe I'll like, I don't know,
I mean,
hustle.
I don't know that my use, like, so you haven't seen the app that I'm showcasing in Next as we go build it, but honestly, I'm including like a text editor where you can edit the shaders, and you probably didn't expect that, because on its own, Shader Doodle, like, it's really cool just setting something up in your own development environment. And then like the Kanye West like website we were talking about before, you just embed that as a web component on your site and you're good to go, and it looks amazing. And so like I said before, I didn't even think this might be a use case for you, but now that I see it is. So yeah, take your time. Like,
initially the thing that originally inspired the use case is I thought for like a doc site, it'd be really nice to just have like the code for a fragment shader side by side with the shader doodle, and I'm like being able to live update that in the doc site and like see results would be pretty cool. And so that was kind of what originally like made me think that, okay, this is necessary. So yeah,
cool. So I think we're pretty close to wrapping this up. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Is there is there anything else you want to add, like any other side projects you're working on that you're proud of, or even just, you know, how to find you online, whether it's on Twitter or other means?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm online as Habs most places. And yeah, I mean, I have other side projects. They're kind of, again, very unrelated to like this graphic space web component one, but I have one. Maybe keep your eye out if you want to like see another, like, I don't know, different web component from like the standard kind of like, you know, ones for like UI and other stuff. I'm working on one to kind of handle web MIDI for people and make it really easy to compose MIDI interfaces.
Cool.
And so keep an eye out for that. It'd be kind of cool, I think.
Nice. I'm automatically curious, but it sounds like you're kind of keeping this under wraps for now, so I won't ask further questions.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. And stay tuned for the next segment where we'll be building an app with Shader Doodle. It's going to be awesome. Thanks. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.